Finally! After ranking both the grass and water starters, we are now set to conclude the trilogy today as I rank every single fire starter from worst to best. Now, as a reminder, these rankings will be based on a rich tapestry of factors. Not only will I consider the starter's strength both in-game and competitively, but I will also greatly take into account their designs as well as their overall importance to the franchise. But before we begin, I need you to smash the like button as it helps me out a ton. Alright then, let's not waste any time and get right into it. Taking dead last for the fire starters is Delphox. Okay, so Delphox is one weird Pokemon. Initially, when the Kalos starters got revealed, I was a big fan of Fennekin's design, and I figured he'd be the starter that I would choose for my first playthrough of X and Y. But then, once its evolutions got revealed, I was done. The designs of both Braixen and Delphox totally sucked, and I instantly decided to instead choose Froakie. And speaking of, that's just another big problem for the Delphox line. Greninja. Seeing as it has essentially become a gaming icon and one of the most popular Pokemon ever, Greninja then casts a massive shadow over the other two Kalosian starters. But when we look at it from a battling perspective, it actually isn't too bad. In the X and Y games themselves, the Fennekin line performs alright. It will have the typing advantage over 3 gym leaders and 1 Elite Four member, which all ultimately makes Delphox the second best starter to select in Kalos. Then, competitively speaking, Delphox is decent at best. Really, all it will ever do is hit kind of hard on the special side of things. But thanks to its decent stat distribution, it can be kind of tanky on the defensive side of things while also moving relatively fast. But it still lacks a lot of power and any move pool diversity. And, as such, it has spent most of its competitive life in either the NU or RU tier. Now, it's also worth noting that Delphox is the signature Pokemon of Serena, and thanks to her massive popularity in the anime, this did in fact give the Fennekin line a bit more attention. But still, if you ask me, I do find it to be the worst fire starter ever, mostly due to its horrendous design, and also for having to live in Greninja's shadow. Next up, we have Emboar. I'm gonna begin this entry with the biggest glaring problem with Emboar. And that problem is that it is the third straight fire and fighting type starter. And not only is this ridiculously redundant, but Emboar is also marginally worse than the other two. I also feel very similar about Emboar's design too. While I do find Tepig to be pretty cute and even charming, I find both Pignite and Emboar to be really awkward looking. Then, from a statistic standpoint, its physical attack certainly jumps off the page at you. But then, everything else besides its HP is kind of bad. I wish Game Freak would have nerfed its special attack to then instead buff its defenses or even its speed. But regardless, Emboar will indeed hit very, very hard on the physical side. Like, seriously, a Flare Blitz from Emboar is gonna hit like a Mack truck. Now, surprisingly though, Tepig is actually the best Unova starter to select for a playthrough of both the base games as well as the sequels. It will have a typing advantage over 4 gym leaders in the first Black and White games, and then 3 gym leaders while in the sequels. It is also the only Unovan starter with an advantage over any of the Elite Four members, with its secondary fighting type allowing it to easily sweep through Grimsley. So overall, Emboar is okay at best. While it is a solid physical attacker, that's really the only good thing I can say about it. Comparatively, it falls flat to the other fire and fighting starters. And finally, its design is just not very good at all. Taking 8th place is Typhlosion. Typhlosion is a Pokemon that a lot of people really like, and rightfully so. It's this awesome flaming hedgehog that is even dubbed the Volcano Pokemon. But arguably no Pokemon in existence has aged worse than Typhlosion. Not only has it been done so dirty in the modern era with its 3D model, but it just also hasn't been that good at all in any sense. Now, one honestly might argue that Typhlosion was never really all that great in battle, but I mean, it's always been pretty solid to use in the Johto games. However, ever since about Gen 5, it's just been downright underwhelming. At a first glance, its stats aren't bad, but its big problem is that it just has no real diversity within its move pool. It really can only use fire-type moves, and based on just that alone, there are loads of other, stronger fire-type options. I honestly don't have all that much to say about this Pokemon, and it's kind of sad. Well, sure, many, including myself, may be nostalgic for it. The simple fact of the matter is that it has just never been all that great, and unfortunately, it's only ever gotten worse with time. In 7th place, we have Cinderace. Cinderace is just an alright Pokemon. Ironically, it's really just Cinderace itself that I'm not that big of a fan of. I find Scorbunny to be very charming and filled with some great personality, and then Raboot is just objectively cool. But then, like pretty much every other Galar starter, Game Freak kinda just dropped the ball with its final form. I just don't like that random soccer gimmick that completely comes out of nowhere, and it just makes me not like Cinderace all that much at all. But gimmicks aside, there is no denying that the entire Cinderace line is very strong in battle, and debatably, it is in fact the best starter to use for a Sword and Shield playthrough. On its own, Cinderace boasts some very, very good stats, almost making it an ideal speedy sweeper. And with access to one of the best signature moves of all time, no one is gonna enjoy taking a Pyro Ball to the face from this thing. Also, that's not to mention that competitively speaking, Cinderace has the Libero hidden ability, which works essentially the same as Protean, allowing it to turn into any typing while also becoming unpredictable while in battle. Finally, Cinderace was definitely the most advertised Galarian starter in the anime series. Not only did Champion Leon have an awesome Cinderace, but it was also Go's partner Pokemon, and it appeared in pretty much every episode of Journeys. All in all, it's really just its gimmicky design that holds Cinderace back. Well, that, and that it doesn't have a secondary typing. Next up is Hisuian Typhlosion. Hisuian Typhlosion honestly took every problem with base Typhlosion and fixed it. First, it added the ghost typing to its kit, and as we have seen many times in the past, the fire and ghost type combination works very well together, especially if the Pokemon is a special attacker. And speaking of, statistically, it will sacrifice a bit of speed and health to instead hit harder on the special side of things. Also, Hisuian Typhlosion has a much better move pool as well, with access to moves like Calm Mind, Curse, Hex, and Infernal Parade. It makes it a much more diverse and more powerful battler than its base form. Knowing this, it shouldn't come as that much of a surprise to learn that Hisuian Typhlosion ends up finding much more use in competitive, while also consistently being found in higher tiers than its base form. In Legends Arceus, you will honestly end up having a very fun time using Hisuian Typhlosion. It matches up pretty well with just about every big battle in that game, and its signature move Infernal Parade is especially helpful here as it can really cripple opposing teams. The only thing that I'm a bit indifferent about on this Pokemon is that design. It really isn't all that great, and it kinda just looks like a normal Typhlosion who burned up some of that oddish green. In closing, Hisuian Typhlosion really did everything it needed to do. It performs very well in its native games, it boasts a pretty bold design, and it definitely outclassed its base form. In 5th place is the most recent fire starter, Skeledirge. Skeledirge is one absolutely great starter. I genuinely believe that it is easily the best starter line from Paldea, and it's not that close either. I remember when Fuecoco was first revealed, and pretty much everyone instantly fell in love with it. Then, once players got to use the Fuecoco line in-game, it further catapulted it to becoming one of the best modern starters in Pokemon history. Now, in Scarlet and Violet, the Fuecoco line is ridiculously overpowered. It will end up having a typing advantage over 6 of the 8 gym leaders. which is just insane, and easily makes it the most OP starter for an in-game playthrough of all time. And that's not to mention that it'll also destroy Poppy in the Elite Four, as well as perform very well in the champion battle with Gita. But besides its typing alone, Skeledirge's stats and move pool really help elevate it even higher. With its solid stat distribution, it can be run in a multitude of ways, and with access to moves like Torch Song, Slack Off, Will-O-Wisp, Hex, Shadow Ball, and even Curse, it can set up while also being bulky and overall nearly impossible to outright wall. There is legitimately so much potential with Skeledirge's kit that it can essentially find a pivotal role on any competitive team. Whether it be in singles or VGC, it's always going to show up and destroy opposing teams. The Fuecoco line has also taken somewhat of a leading role in the new Horizons anime. It was the first partner Pokemon of Roy, and as things currently stand, it is a Crocolore. I for one am very excited to see it fully evolve soon and become a real beast in battle for Roy. I guess the only thing that I don't really like about the Fuecoco line is the final design of Skeledirge. It's not that I outright hate it, it's a bit busy. There's a little too much going on with all the colors and the weird fireball nose topper thing. But other than that, I adore the Fuecoco line in every other way. Next up is the iconic Infernape. It is literally impossible to dislike Infernape. This is because everything about it is just so awesome. From its strength in battle to its depiction in the anime series, to even its inspiration, everything about it is just so peak. So let's begin with its design. And from start to finish, I really believe that the Chimchar line is the best designed starter line ever. Chimchar is adorable, Monferno is great, and then Infernape is just incredible. I mean, it is based on Son Goku, so obviously it's gonna be amazing. Similarly, Chimchar is far and away the best starter to use in any of the Sinnohan games. It will destroy half of the gym leaders, while also even having a typing advantage over Aaron of the Elite Four. But what really helped Infernape enter the GOAT debate was its role in the anime. Ash's Infernape boasts what is easily the best written story in all of Pokemon history, going from hated and abandoned by Paul to accepted and loved by Ash, to then ultimately getting his get back in the Sinnoh League. It's just peak storytelling, and it ultimately helped Ash's Infernape go down as one of his best Pokemon ever. The only thing that's holding Infernape back from being in the top 3 is that it has kind of fallen victim to recent power creep. Early on, Infernape was a beast from a competitive standpoint, but as I'm sure you know, Pokemon have gotten stronger and stronger since Generation 4, and Infernape has more or less stayed the same, and it is in desperate need of some kind of power-up. But don't get me wrong, Infernape has always been a great Pokemon, and it has loads of die-hard fans. And of course, this is thanks in large part to its amazing storyline from the anime. Taking third place is Incineroar. I'll be honest, I originally hated Incineroar when I first saw it. I just found its final design to be really goofy, and while I kind of liked Litten, I thought Incineroar itself just looked terrible. But over time, no Pokemon ever has grown on me quite like Incineroar. While even now in the current day, I don't really love its design, many other factors have contributed to Incineroar ultimately earning its top 3 spot in today's video. I definitely think the first thing I have to highlight about Incineroar is its competitive dominance. While it is mediocre at best in the singles format, Incineroar is probably the greatest Pokemon ever for VGC battles. With Intimidate for an ability, along with moves like Fake Out, Flare Blitz, Parting Shot, and even Knockoff, it can be an absolute force in this format. If you're looking for a real, in-depth look as to why Incineroar is so good in VGC, then I definitely recommend checking out a Wolf Glick video once you finish here. He constantly glazes Incineroar, and for good reason. But in short, Incineroar is a staple on pretty much every VGC team, and it was even the most used Pokemon in the past World Championships. But besides its VGC prowess, Incineroar also, kind of surprisingly, earned a spot on the Smash Bros. Roster. Game director Masahiro Sakurai thought its wrestling style would work well in the game, and honestly, he was spot on. I love getting to use Incineroar in Smash Ultimate, and this also helped further catapult it into the mainstream, as Smash Bros. Is basically like the Avengers of video games. And finally, I have to discuss Ash Ketchum's Incineroar from the Sun and Moon anime. As a little Litten, it went through one of the most emotional backstories of all time, only to then go on to become one of the strongest Pokemon in all of Alola once it was able to defeat its idol in the Alola League. Sure, its storytelling probably didn't reach the high peaks that Infernape's reached, but it was still great and really worked wonders. In closing on Incineroar, it is without a doubt one of the most interesting and polarizing Pokemon to ever grace the franchise. While initially, it did get a lot of hate, over the years it has gotten better and better, and it is now arguably the greatest competitive Pokemon in series history. In second place, we have Blaziken. Everything about Blaziken is just cool, from its 10 out of 10 design to even its ridiculous strength in battle. Okay, let's flash back to when Blaziken was first revealed to the world. It was during the Johto League in the anime, when Harrison surprised Ash Ketchum and viewers alike with one epic introduction. Blaziken would then go on to destroy Ash's Charizard in what was at the time one of the sickest fights in the entire anime series. This perfectly both promoted the upcoming Hoenn games while also proving that Blaziken is just one badass Pokemon. Then, once we did get to use the Torchic line in the Hoenn games, it unsurprisingly turned out to be a real beast. Its fire and fighting typing, along with its balanced stats, made it work perfectly as a mixed attacker, and it was definitely able to hold its own in the region with massive amounts of water. But of course, it did get the typing advantage over the champion of Hoenn in every game except for Emerald. Then competitively, Blaziken was originally just mid. But in Gen 5, it got Speed Boost as its hidden ability, which turned it into a massive threat. But it got even better one generation later with the advent of its new Mega Evolution. Mega Blaziken ended up becoming one of the most broken Pokemon of all time, and unsurprisingly, it got banished all the way up to the Uber tier. Ultimately, thanks to both its Mega Form and Speed Boost, Blaziken would go on to become arguably the most busted starter Pokemon of all time. And finally, of course the Torchic line did get a bunch of extra attention in the Hoenn anime, as it was May's signature Pokemon. Throughout the advanced series, it grew alongside her and by the end, turned into an absolute beast. To close on Blaziken, it is without a doubt one of the coolest Pokemon of all time. It is also easily the greatest fire and fighting type starter ever, and one of my all-time favorites. But the best fire type starter ever is obviously Charizard. Call me cliche, call me basic, call me whatever, but Charizard really is the best. I mean, there is a reason why it's so jammed down our throats. Because it's objectively awesome. It's kind of crazy how Game Freak absolutely perfected the fire starter on their first ever attempt. And none have ever been able to come close to Charizard's iconicism and overall importance to the franchise. I mean, let's just go down the list. Charizard is on the cover of 2 different Pokemon games. It has also been in 3 different Smash Bros. It does have the most expensive Pokemon card of all time. And Charizard's got 2 different Mega Forms, as well as an awesome Gigantamax. Also, pretty much every powerful champion in the anime uses one, and let's just face facts. Charizard is the second most iconic Pokemon of all time, only behind Pikachu itself. I can almost guarantee you that pretty much everyone on Earth with access to the internet knows who Charizard is. When we look at it in the games, Charmander is far and away the most chosen starter in any Kanto playthrough, even though it really isn't that good in those games. It isn't even that good until the late game when it is fully evolved and finally gets some decent type matchups. Then, competitively speaking, Charizard has kind of been all over the place. In some generations, it's incredible, and in other gens, it's hot garbage. It definitely hit its prime during Generation 6, thanks in large part to its 2 mega forms. With the 2 forms being so vastly different, there was an element of surprise that could totally throw your opponent for a loop. Plus, both forms were just disgustingly busted as well. But what really made me fall in love with Charizard was Ash's in the anime. It was his first real ace Pokemon, and also his first ever Pokemon to go through a real story arc. Then, once Ash did earn his trust, the two became nearly unstoppable, and whenever Ash would bring him back for a big battle, it was always peak cinema. Ash's Charizard would end up becoming easily his best ever fire type, and literally his second best Pokemon overall. In closing, you simply can't quantify how impactful Charizard has been to the franchise. Without it, the Pokemon franchise probably wouldn't have stood the test of time. Not only is it one massively influential Pokemon, but Charizard is one of the most iconic and well-known fictional characters of all time. It forever set the tone as to what makes for a perfect Fire-type starter, and honestly, no other Fire-type starter will ever be as popular or as important as the OG. Well guys, that's that. Those are my rankings of every Fire-type starter from worst to best. Be sure to let me know what changes you would make in the comments section below. And also, check out my ranking videos for both the grass and water starters on screen now. Thanks guys.